Want to welcome everybody to From the Hawkeye of the Storm, our post-game coverage. We bring you throughout the Iowa men's basketball, women's basketball, and football season. As you can see, I'm not in my natural environment, or as my wife would say, my natural habitat. But we've got a good friend of mine on the line with us. Coach Gary Close is with us to talk about what happened today. I don't know where to start with this, but Gary, first of all, here we are, postseason play once again. This is our third year of doing the show together. You've been awesome throughout the season, as always. You're a Hawkeye through and through. These days, quite frankly, suck on so many levels. Yeah. Where do you start with this? Like, how do you explain to the fan base or kind of help them see the big picture of what was a team that was hopeful to get to March Madness and get to the tournament, that now it's pretty much sealed the deal that they're not going dancing this year?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it looked to me, and it's just purely a guess, that I think they were kind of suffering from a hangover from the Illinois game. I think that Illinois game was so big and so important, and they didn't play particularly well. I thought they played hard, but they didn't play well, especially the seniors. And I think it just kind of carried over to this game, where just right from the beginning they just didn't look in sync. They caught Ohio State at a really poor time. They were on a roll, and they're playing for the coach, and so that was not a great draw. But that's the way it is. You beat Illinois, you don't have that draw. So. And then we've talked about it on occasion. You give up 90 points, it's going to be really hard to beat anybody. And I think Ohio State shot over 50% from three and right around 50% from two, and kind of had their way on a team that's not a great offensive team. So I don't think it was a lack of effort. I think everybody was busting their tail. I just think they just hit a streak where they weren't playing very well, and that's not the time to do it when you're one and done.
The narrative out there, Gary, and you're not immune to this, Fran can't win in the tournament. Now, that's not true, because they did win 4 games in 4 days a couple of years ago and won this tournament. But in large part, here's what frustrated me about that Illinois game. We recapped that. I don't need to rehash it too much, but Stephen Bardo of Big Ten Network, who I have a lot of respect for, made a comment during that game that, okay, now it's time to transition and kind of regroup and get ready for a tournament in which Fran McCaffery's bunch has traditionally played very well. That was just, I think, a dumb comment by Stephen Bardo, because they don't traditionally play very well here. In fact, they traditionally struggle mightily in this tournament, with the exception being the one tournament run. In fact, they've never won more than one game in a single tournament under Fran McCaffery, with the exception being the one run. Why is it? Do you have any theory as to why Fran's teams specifically, other than just wrong place, wrong time, wrong part of the season, wrong matchup, why they traditionally struggle to win games here?
Yeah, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can pinpoint it. I think what could potentially happen is, they're a high-scoring team, and when they don't score or have a bad shooting night, their defense hasn't been able to overcome that. And so you don't outscore a team, and you get yourself knocked out. And I think they struggled offensively in both of these last 2 games. Still put up pretty decent numbers, but not to the level that they're capable of playing. And so that's where you need your defense to keep you in games. And they've been down big in both games right off the get-go, and digging themselves out of a hole takes a lot of energy. It reduces your margin of error, and they just didn't get enough stops at the defensive end to catch a team or get a lead.
This is a Buckeye team that was playing for a lot. They got a chance now to get to the field. And in fact, they got a chance. I had a conversation with Tim Kruger of Stadium and his bracketology expertise, if you will. He thinks they got a chance with just this win tonight. Now, there's certainly no lock. It depends on what happens across the country. Right. But they beat Illinois tomorrow. They got a good shot at sneaking into the tournament, which is an incredible story given what they've been through with the coaching staff, the dismissal of Chris Holtmann, who now sounds like he may be the odds-on favorite to get the job at DePaul. But I digress. Just terribly disappointing. This is the second straight year Iowa's lost to a lower-seeded Buckeye team on Thursday of the Big Ten tournament. So lots to get to. Here's how it's going to work tonight, folks. We do have our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line open. Appreciate Iowa Smokehouse being a part of that. If you're calling our phone line, here's what I'll ask. That everybody limit your questions to one question. I know that's difficult to do because we're used to being able to converse with Coach. We all enjoy doing that. But if you're calling our phone line, please limit it to one question because a little bit limited on equipment here as I'm on the road. But we do have the StreamYard phone line fully functional. And so if you're interested in calling by means of StreamYard, certainly do that. The link is in our description. So let's go to our first Iowa Smokehouse caller of the day. Before we do that, I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, RTI Threads. Been plugging this because even though it's March Madness, we're thinking about college basketball. We're recapping college basketball. We've got Iowa baseball in full swing, and the Hawks have been down south for a lot of action here in March. And we're going to see what happens because the Hawks, of course, came very close last year to made the NCAA tournament. Maybe have a chance at getting more done this year, but have played better here over the last week. They got almost an unheralded star right now that a lot of the country doesn't know about in Brody Brecht. Check out the way you can support RTI Threads, Iowa Baseball, the Swarm, all of the above, the NIL cause for this program. Visit iowabaseballswarm.com, courtesy of our friends over at RTI Threads. They have partnered with the Swarm and with Iowa Baseball. Again, that's www.iowabaseballswarm.com. Let's go to our first caller on our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close. Who's on the line?
Steve.
Hey, Steve, what's your question?
We'll start with the positive. That is, placed a couple orders using your Amazon link. So
thank you.
Encourage others to do so. So thank you for sharing that. The other night, my question, I'm going to heed your guidance here, limited to one. Coach Close, I shared this after the Illinois game. It just seemed like there's such a gap in Iowa athletically. So I feel like that feeds into their defensive problems. It also doesn't seem like it fits the style of play. I understand Frano wants to play fast, but I just don't see that we have the athletes to successfully play that system. I'm not advocating we go to the Wisconsin slowdown type of style, but I don't know. I'd rather see them win playing a style that suits the players we can recruit versus trying to play a style we can't recruit the players for. And I'll let you respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think they're, when you take a look at Illinois, they're very athletic. I mean, they're probably one of the top athletic teams in the country. And I think Iowa's somewhere in the middle of the pack as far as that goes. But you can still win and consistently. But you got to do some different things that can help you offset what you might lack in athleticism in terms of taking care of the ball. Maybe not trying to cover as much of the court. If the guy's quicker than you, then don't give him as much room. Things like that. On offense, getting good shots. Their athleticism or lack thereof, if you say that, doesn't hurt them on the offensive end. They're one of the top scoring teams in the country and have been for a long, long time. So I think it's a cop out saying that you can't do the same thing on the defensive end. It can be done, but it requires work and commitment and things like that.
Just to piggyback on that, Gary, because these are always the shows, it kind of feels like the end of the year. I know they're going to make the NIT, all right, but I don't think most people want to sit here and preview what the NIT is going to look like, with all due respect to that tournament. So my question to you from a macro level, Gary, when you compare what Fran has done, everybody wants to talk about winning as coach in Big Ten or in Iowa history. The results as it relates to tournament play have largely been similar, or at least in the same aura of what we saw with what you did with Coach Dr. Tom Davis at Iowa. Is that fair? Doug's saying no in the queue. He's an Iowa basketball junkie. What say you? A lot of people compare the two eras.
In terms of what?
In terms of style and in terms of success.
That's a good question. I'd have to. I don't. I'm not as knowledgeable in terms of postseason success. I mean, we had some runs. I don't think we were ever knocked out in the first round. I think we won every single first round game. And we had a run at Iowa where we played some unbelievable teams. We played Duke both years. They won the national championship and got knocked out. We played Connecticut our last year in the Sweet 16. They won the national championship. We got knocked out by Kentucky the year they won the national championships. We had like 4 or 5 tournaments where we got beat by the eventual national championship, and that's the luck of the draw, so to speak. So, or unlucky part of the draw. But record-wise, it might be fairly similar. I really don't know. But
stylistically, Dr. Tom's teams wanted to play up and down. You guys wanted to play up and down.
Yep.
But they were better defensively, right?
Possibly. I'd have to go back and look. When we struggled, it was on the defensive end for the most part.
Yeah.
The league was brutal back then. I mean, there were some unbelievable basketball teams that really tested you defensively. But that's the case with most teams. I think in a lot of cases you don't win, and you got to look at the defensive end for the most part. Now, some games you can't make any shots, and you get yourself knocked out. But I think if you watch most games, a good share of them are lost on the defensive end.
Appreciate our caller. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good question to lead this show off with. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close. Who's on the line?
This is James. I'm having issues again, but I only have one question anyways.
Okay.
Obviously, we don't want to make a tournament, right? We want to make the March Madness tournament, right? Obviously. But now that we know that's not the case, and now that we know we're going to dance, how do you guys get guys like this to senior years kind of focused for that? When it's like a lot of these guys, I feel like obviously they want to make March Madness, and they didn't. Do you think there'll be a little bit of a letdown, or do you think they'll be ready to go? Because I know some teams it's a little bit more of a letdown where it's like, oh, we didn't make it there, now we're not as ready to go, or we didn't meet our goal, or didn't achieve our goal, so now we're not as focused or as ready to go as prepared because we didn't get to where we wanted to get to.
That'd be a better question for you, Gary, as a former coach.
As far as playing in the NIT and being ready to play,
get your guys together for what seems to be a major consolation.
Yeah. Won't be easy. It won't be easy. It's you'll find out a lot about the character of the team because it's a letdown. It's not the same tournament. Although if you can get on a roll and you're playing when other teams are not playing, then it starts to get a little bit more enjoyable. I know one year we played in the NIT. We had a really young team of like 3-4 freshmen we started, and it was a little bit different because every game we could play, we got better, and we made it all the way to we lost at home actually to go to New York City, which was a disappointment. But once we got into it and got going, it was a lot of fun. But it's not going to be easy because it's a letdown not playing in March Madness.
Did you ever coach in the NIT?
Yeah, we played in the NIT a couple of times. One year, I think when Jess was a freshman, Kingsbury, they were all freshmen, and we lost to Penn State on a buzzer beater to go to the Final Four. And then the year before our last year, we played, I think, Georgia in an NIT game, and that was a good example where we thought we should have been in the NCAA and probably should have been in, and we're not, and we could not get it going in the NIT and got knocked out in the first game.
Kelvin, the chat says, I'm sure Coach Close will say the truth. This season reminds us of Ricky Davis's freshman year.
This year?
I guess, apparently.
Yeah. I gotta hit my brain matter there to remember. That's a while back. Boy, he was a good player. Man, he was a player. Yeah.
Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call. Now we've got Jake on hold. Jake, welcome.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Appreciate all you guys do for Iowa basketball. I was at the game tonight. I was really disappointed in what I saw. 14 years of Fran, and it seems like it's the same exact thing every single year. He doesn't recruit any athletes. We play teams like Ohio State this year, Maryland, Penn State, that we should be better than. They can't play any defense, which is the problem why Fran's team hasn't played defense over 14 years, because we don't have athletes on the court. Even like Luka Garza, you see why he's not getting minutes in the NBA, because he is an unathletic guy who can't play defense. You get guys like Isaiah Moss, Joe Toussaint transferring because he's playing other guys that he thinks can score the ball, when who cares if you can score the ball if you can't get stops? I don't know. I'm just sick of – I heard Tony, who calls in a lot, he said next year if Iowa doesn't make the Sweet 16, Fran should go, which I agreed with that statement. But after just what I saw the last two games with the Illinois team, who completely athletically was better than us, and tonight Ohio State, who was better than us, I don't know. I just think I'm ready to move on and try a different style of basketball instead of these unathletic guys who can just score the ball. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are, but
can I comment on that first, Gary? Because
Sure.
I do want to respond to one thing, Jake, and I understand I'm kind of picking at you here, but you
no
said
problem.
Fran does not recruit athletes, you said Fran does not recruit any athletes. You know that's not true. He recruits athletes. He doesn't typically land a lot of athletes. He does get some here or there, like Tyler Cook, Tony Perkins. Whether you like what Tony's doing right now, I'm not arguing for his performance, but he's an athlete. Keegan Murray was a pretty darn good athlete. Chris was a really good athlete. And I mentioned Tyler Cook was an excellent athlete. But you're right. They're few and far between. I know exactly what you're saying. Honestly, there's rumor. I don't know where these rumors started. I'm certainly not reading through all the message boards. There's a rumor out there right now. You probably heard it, Jake, that Patrick's considering maybe playing somewhere else next year for his final year of eligibility. I don't know if there's any substance to that or not. But if that's the case, I said at the beginning of the season, I wouldn't have been surprised this was Fran's last year. I mean, I don't think that's the case, but it would not shock me, given the fact that it sounds like Jack's not going to play here and now Patrick's looking to go elsewhere. Maybe that won't happen. But frankly, I'm where you're at, I think, in large part, Jake. I am not going to be crying myself to sleep like Tony if Fran ends up walking away this year. I'm not. I'm to that point. But you know what, Jake? To be quite honest, I know this is a basketball show. I wouldn't be crying myself to sleep if Kirk Ferentz walked away this year. Not that I have anything against either guy, but that's where I'm at as a fan. Gary, do you have anything to add to that? I know you come from a very different place perspective-wise.
Yeah. It's a tough deal. I think you got to keep everything in perspective of, where Iowa is. There's not a lot of big cities. There's not a big minority population. They're in the Midwest. I know that sounds like excuses, but it's the farther away you go from home, the harder it is to get people to come, and you're going up against other good programs in the league as well as other good programs in other leagues. So it's, I'm sure they would love to recruit 12 phenomenal athletes, but it's not going to happen at Iowa, just because of the demographics and where they are. So we face the same thing at Wisconsin to some extent, maybe not quite as much because we have Milwaukee and Chicago's not too far, but Chicago's tough to recruit because of, getting kids in academically and things like that. So it's not easy. I'll just put it that way. It's not easy to recruit and coach at places like Iowa and Wisconsin, especially when you compare them to places like Michigan and Ohio State and Indiana and places like that that have got more things going for them.
Yeah, and like you said, Corey, he does recruit athletes, but he doesn't always land them. But in this new day and age with the transfer portal, it just backs up his thing of he lands a guy like Ben Krikke, who clearly can't hang on the defensive side of the ball with these bigger, more athletic guys in the Big Ten. And that's why his minutes have gone down. And that's why he's played way worse once we got into conference play.
He cannot get the bigger talents for a couple of reasons. And we've talked about NIL. He does not have the NIL support. I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but he does not have the NIL support that someone like Kirk Ferentz, who's probably less malleable, a guy who really would prefer not to deal with the portal and NIL than Fran McCaffrey. I think Fran's willing to do it. Fran does not have the support of the big money donors that they need in order to pursue people in the transfer portal. And that's not, I'm not defending him by that. I'm simply saying there's another mark against him. If you're looking at like, hey, as a whole, what do we have here? What chances how do we dig ourselves out of this? Can we dig ourselves out with NIL and transfer portal? Well, I don't think there's the support there. So that's tough right now. It was tough before. It's even tougher now.
Yeah, I agree. He doesn't get the support, but I think he could have gone out and gotten a guy who's more athletic, who plays defense, who can block shots, who can maybe score a little bit compared to an offensive-only player when it seems like we don't need any more. We don't play defensive all. It's just whenever we get to March, I just feel like it's the same thing besides that Big Ten tournament run 2 years ago. It's just you can't get stops, and if you can't get stops, it doesn't matter if you score on the other end.
Yeah.
Appreciate all you guys do. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Thanks for the
talk
call.
to you guys later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. A lot of fans feel exactly like Jake does. And that's the reality of it. Whether people want to say you're living in the moment and you're not seeing the big picture, we have relived this moment. That's the one thing that I would use to defend fans who say, I'm done. I'm tired of it. I want to move on. Similar to how I've defended people who would say the same thing with football, because you have a very large sample size. Like 14 years is a large enough sample size now to be able to have an opinion that's based upon evidence. And it's okay to have different opinions, but it's not like, hey, third year in, it's still a rebuilding process. No, this is 14 years in. But I don't think it's changing. We've said that before. Like, the style is not changing. So, you know, the old adage that Kirk loves to go to, Gary, that we just got to keep doing. We're not going to try to reinvent the wheel. We just got to keep trying to do what we do best better. I guarantee you that's what Fran's approach is with this whole thing. Like, he's not looking at this and saying, well, I got to recruit better athletes. I got to play better defense. No, he's focused on how he wins. He's 60-some years old. He's not looking to change, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell. I'm not there. I'm not watching them work. I mean, I just, you know, what you see on the court is what I see. I think, and it's case with a lot of teams, when they get knocked out, it's usually on the defensive end. It's hard to coach a high scoring team and a real good defensive team. I know that sounds like an excuse too. There's only a certain number of minutes in a practice round and a practice day. So that's, you know, I think that is part of it, but, you know, they had stretches this year where they played real well. It just wasn't enough, and it wasn't at the end. And that's what you think about. That's, you know, when you think about how the season ended and you know, what chances they had to do what they wanted to do and didn't get it done. And that's, unfortunately, that's a lot of what things are based on, is how well you do in tournaments. And you know, that's like the Big Ten's getting a lot of heat because they haven't won a championship in I don't know how many years. And until they do, they're going to keep getting the same heat. You gotta prove it in March. That's the big time to prove it. And if you do, then you reap the rewards. If you don't, then you continue to get the heat.
Lots to get to here, folks. Appreciate everybody being here. And I see a lot of these comments, like Andy says, same movie every year. Dan, same March every March. I get it. I totally get it. Again, RTI Threads, check it out. I've got the, you can't really see it. Let me aim the camera down. Yes, I've got the Zach Lutmer apparel on here from RTI Threads. Check it all out over at rtithreads.com, but also be sure to support Iowa Baseball. Go to iowabaseballswarm.com. That's iowabaseballswarm.com. Also want to thank Iowa Smokehouse. They're sponsoring our call-in line. Check it out. And of course, we got lots of sports ahead of us. Just because the Hawks aren't going dancing, or at least we have a strong feeling the Hawks aren't dancing. They'll be playing somewhere. And of course, lots of basketball ahead. NBA basketball, mentioned college baseball, MLB, everything back, and busy time of year. So check out the wide a range of snacking products over at iowasmokehouse.com, heart of central Iowa, actually just kind of south central Iowa down in Albia. Check it out and use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your order. You'll get free shipping with any $50 order. Again, that's the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We've got one of the biggest Hawkeye fans out there, Doug.
There he is.
Welcome, Doug.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing okay.
Well, it's been a rough day for me personally, so I don't want to get into that. I always have a rough time. This year's been rough, but there were so many things I want to say. A lot of things I want to say. 55, 56, 70, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 91, 92, 93, 97, 98, 99, not 98. That's zero I was going to talk to you about. 99, 01, 5, 6, 14, 15, 16, 19, 21, 22, 23. That's every year Iowa's made the NCAA tournament. I just have it on top of my head, too. I'm not looking at it. I was won the Big Ten 23, 26, 45, 55, 56, 68, 70, 79. They won the Big Ten tournament 01, 06, and 22.
So why are you?
I've forgotten more about Iowa basketball than most of the people in the chat. Okay, I'm frustrated because again, my mom's back in the hospital. People want to fire Fran. I remember March 6, 1998 very well. All right, sorry.
No, hey, you have every right to state your opinion. I think the key is with all of this, Doug, is what are your expectations, right? If your expectation is, hey, I want to be a tournament team year in and year out, then Fran's your guy. Let's not act like, hey, them making the NIT is like a normality. They've made every tournament in recent history, and they would have been a pretty high seed in that COVID year had they
19, 20, 21, 22, 23.
But if your expectations are to go further, to get to the second weekend, etc., then he's not your guy, Doug.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence would say he's not your guy, right?
I agree. Dr. Tom went from 1989 to 1999 without making a Sweet 16. And that was 10 years. And I said Fran should be held to the same standard as Dr. Tom. And no, he's not as good a coach as Dr. Tom.
Well, he's been here 14 years.
Yep. I don't like that he's the winningest coach there is in Iowa basketball. So when people say I'm a Fran lover, no, I don't like that he passed Dr. Tom just by longevity. That doesn't make me happy. I'm a fan of Fran because he turned around the program. He actually does a lot for the community. I don't want another talk. I don't want to do again what we did to the program in 99. That would not be right.
I understand.
Like I said, my childhood died on March 6, 1998. It was during the halftime of the Michigan first ever Big Ten tournament game. First ever Big Ten tournament game. I'm 14. I'm in the Ames Middle School. I'm with all these Cyclones, listening to Coach Close and his team play with Ricky Davis and all that. They were ranked in the top 10 that year. And Bob Bowlesby comes on and says how he has pride. He's going to get to replace the winningest basketball and winningest football coach of all time at Iowa, which he did. He replaced him with Steve Alford and Kirk Ferentz. I thought that was wrong. He should have let the process play out. I remember that it's NIT game because Coach is right. 95, I fell in love with the Iowa Hawkeye basketball team because of the NIT in 1995. My dad waited in line for 2 hours outside Carver, driving from Ames to Carver in a line to get tickets for the Ohio game. You remember that game, Coach?
Yep.
The Mac Shack. What was that guy's name?
I'll tell you.
Grant.
It'll come to me.
Trent Grant.
And his brother and his son's now playing.
Is he? And was it Ford?
Shack of the Mac. Yeah,
Yeah, Shack of the Mac.
Yeah, I'll have to think about it.
And you guys sold that game out. See, going to the NIT, it depends on 13. We went to the NIT. We were selling it out. Last time, again, yeah. Anyway, Dr. Tom never lost a first-round game in the NCAA tournament, Corey. Even at Boston College. Dr. Tom never lost a first-round game in the NCAA tournament. So,
okay.
But, I don't know. I don't know what my point is. I want this done the right way with Fran leaving. I don't like that Jordan and Connor have negative things to say about the program. I don't like that. I'm hoping in 20 years that these guys have a positive thing, that we're not I want it to be positive. Fran is not the greatest coach in the world. He can't coach defense. They're never going to be able to play defense.
I don't think it's a matter of he can't. I just think it's a matter that he doesn't.
Yes.
I really don't think that someone who's been in the game that long, Gary, I'm not asking you to comment your opinion on Fran's abilities, but, well, I guess I kind of am. Would you say that Fran has the ability, understands defensive coaching?
Well, everybody's got different philosophies on how to play. Some people play zone, some people press, some people play man. So it's different. I think some people are better teachers of defense than they are offense, and vice versa. So, and some of that is your philosophy and how much time you want to spend, and where you want to put your emphasis. This is what we emphasize. This is what's important to us. But you got to be yourself. I mean, you can't coach something that you're not. And so it's everybody's a little bit different.
The only thing I'll say about this, and then if you got anything else to say, Doug, I'll let you have it. But
I don't want to say, but I don't want to. You said to be quick, but
no, let me just real quick, as it relates to going out in the right way, and you're talking about some of the things that have been said by Connor and by Patrick. I agree with that, and I haven't given that a ton of thought until I'm seeing some of these comments, like this comment here from, is it Leanne? Says they cried about not having fans show up, then proceed not to show up to the biggest games to keep their season. The only thing I would say, like, if you really compare what players on the men's side say versus players on the women's side, that'd be the only thing I'm like, what's the difference here? Because a lot of these are the same fans. The difference is the men's team has not generated the support that the women's team has. So the women have nothing but good thing to say about the fan base, and there's some complaining going on with some of Iowa's major figures on the men's side. And I agree with you too. Like, I understand the frustration when you walk into a big game on a weeknight and it's like bare, and you just saw the women sell out the night before. I get it. But that's also a result of the failures of the coach and the failures of the program in March.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. I don't want to go on too many more tangents and points, but we talked about athletes. Was Ryan Bowen a really good athlete, Coach? Was Matt Bowen a really good athlete?
Ryan Bowen's a very good athlete. I don't know if you would call him explosive.
Okay.
But in terms of quickness and anticipation, and he was good. I wouldn't say great, but he was a better athlete than they gave him credit for.
I agree with most all, like Jim Bartles, Russ Millard. Were they good athletes?
They're pretty good athletes.
I can name all your Hawkeyes, but my point is, I think we're, and I don't want to say some of the racial undertones there, but everyone's like Ricky Davis. That '98 team, Ricky Davis didn't help them. You guys went to the NIT. We had 2 draft picks that year. That was probably as talented a team as you've ever had, Coach, other than the teams that were the Raveling teams with, Eddie and those guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of saying that Dr. Tom had about the same type of recruits. Chris Street, a lot of the comparisons we did with Chris Street were like a Jared Uthoff. We compared those guys. So I don't know. Ryan Bowen and Matt Millard both had 10-year NBA careers, and they're still white guys from Iowa, and when people are talking about Peyton having an NBA career, you can have an NBA career if Robinson from Michigan can have an NBA career. A lot of our players can have NBA careers. Second thing, and I'm going to quickly do this. I don't know if Corey watches any of the games I put on Facebook, but I used to love the press. And I had this question because Dr. Tom's press was different. Dr. Tom would have somebody right up there. Jeff Sells or Chris Street or JR, right up. Jake Jakes. I remember Jake Jakes. Be right up there, as close as they can, hands all over. And the inbounder, what was the worst throw off the face of your of one of your players? You know what I'm talking about? Where the guy just, because I watched Jake Jakes take one off the nose. And you told me you got a technical foul at Illinois for screaming at somebody for that. This is what I'm saying makes sense, Corey. The players used to have an Iowa player back off of Tom Davis's press, used to chuck the ball as far as they could at our players' faces.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple of players getting a bloody nose. I just wanted you to tell a couple of those stories, if you could.
Yeah, that was in Indiana.
Was that Indiana?
That was in Indiana. Yep. In successive years.
Yeah, right.
Back years. Yep.
Did they ever call that as a foul or anything? If the player would chuck
the first time it happened was with Kent Hill.
Uh-huh.
No, excuse me, Brad Lowhouse, and that was for the Big Ten championship. And they came out with a declaration from the league that was not going to be allowed again. That would be an unsportsmanlike act, and the rest are supposed to wash it. And then the next year, the same thing happened again, and nothing was done. So
I remember a couple of your players getting bloody noses, like Jake. I think Kansas, I think Jake Jake's got a bloody nose or something. The ball was chucked at him. I don't know. I just remember that always being something that happened every year, and you mentioned it before. And I always thought that was always my Tom Davis thing. I always remember about Tom Davis's teams, and people talk about tempo, was that 55 press where the guy was just right up there. Sorry, thank you, people.
Yeah.
Hey, we'll see what happens. So
yeah, good to see you.
All right.
I think one thing that would be said, Corey, is if they were losing or if they've lost and they scored 35 points for a great defensive team, people would have the same complaints. They'd say, "Well, we got to find somebody to come in here and let's play this boring offense and let's get some excitement in the gym, blah blah blah." And so when you don't win, you're going to get picked apart, and they're going to find something that they don't like, so I think when you evaluate things, you got to look at the whole picture, the whole deal of what's been done, and then make a decision or evaluation.
The bottom line is you got to give Fran credit for winning the conference tournament 2 years ago. That team won the conference tournament, earned it, and whatever they drank before going to Indy that year, good on them. But other than that 1 year, they have not had any success in postseason under Fran. Like besides the NIT run where they made they made a run to the championship game of the NIT. I mean, I wouldn't even be considering that. So that is, if people want to bring up frustrations, just admit I have the expectation of making it deep in the tournament or making it to the second weekend. I think we should at least here and there be one of the 16 best teams in the country, and it should show up in March. That should be the argument, because I think what Gary said is fair. You can win and get to the second weekend playing Iowa style, but the reason it's easy to look at the numbers and say the reason they're not getting there is because the defense isn't good enough. Anyways, BC Hawkeye with Dr. Tom there was hope and excitement. Now it is uninspired, disorganized, and deflating. Iowa basketball is in trouble and sinking. Thank you, DC Hawkeye. Appreciate your take and the super chat. And a couple people taking a little bit of exception to something you said earlier about effort, Gary. Mr. Baconator says, effort okay, not on the glass. And let's see, Cyhawk C-Money adds to that. He says, I'm disappointed in the defensive effort and rebounding. No excuses for poor closeouts on threes. That is effort. So what would you say in response to those concerns about effort?
I think there's some truth to that, but they're too far off. You can't play that far off and get out there in time. And a lot of it's technique. I remember the 1-3 that Ohio State hit in the corner. I think it was the lefty in the second half, and the big guy for us was getting out there, Cricky, and he completely turned. He almost did a 360 before he even started to move to get out there. He moved, but his technique was terrible, and so he's late. And one time they drove the right lane line. I think it was in the first half, and Namali came way off to try to stop the ball and left the guy wide open in the corner, same side help. You can't same side help, or they're going to put a shoot in the corner and do it every single time. And so defensively, in terms of rebounding, I think there is some validity to effort, but I don't think they lost the game because of effort. I think they lost the game because they didn't play well enough in both games. And in fact, I think in the Illinois game, it might have even been too much effort. I think they were too geeked up, too senior day. Parents are all there, and sometimes that can be a disaster. And it was a total disaster. Perkins gets 2 fouls already, which sits the entire first half, never gets into rhythm, and so I don't think it's as much effort as it is technique, and not completely. That's not fair, but I think it was more that than necessarily the effort.
I know you're not there every day or any day, right? So, but I'm just curious, what do you think goes on then in film sessions when you're breaking, when Fran, given you've coached with some guy like Bo Ryan and Dr. Tom coached very different styles, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
So you've worked with different head coaches and systems stylistically, et cetera. So based on your experience, what do you think is occurring when Fran and the coaches are breaking down film, maybe breaking it down with the players? Are they not acknowledging those errors, those technique errors? Are they just do you think they're just honing in or primarily honing in on offensive issues? Like why is there not seem to be, why are those things that are so obvious, why don't those things get fixed?
Well, I don't know if some of those are obvious to the naked eye, so to speak. I think some are. If you don't check out and somebody goes around you and grabs a rebound, I mean, that's obvious. But like when I was telling you about the guy Creaky closing out, that's not obvious. He completely turned around so he could get his left hand in the guy's face rather than going out with his right hand, and that was just enough to give the guy enough room. And the same thing with Damali. He's too far off the guy in a corner. He can't get out there. It's too far. I mean, I don't care how athletic you are, you're not going to be able to get that far out. And so that's all positioning and technique. And now what they do, I have no idea. I know in our case, and things have changed. Now you got all this computer stuff and breaking down tape. When I was at Iowa, we didn't have any of that. Now, you got all kinds of stuff. So you can really do a lot of work with video. I have no idea how much video they watch. We watched a lot of video at Wisconsin because, like they say, the film doesn't lie. It's there, and you point it out. But then again, you point out things that are important to you, important with your philosophy and what you want to hit home, and what are the most important things with respect to how you think what you need to do to win. And with somebody else, it could be totally different. They may be watching something totally different.
Yeah.
So I have no idea. But some of that stuff is to me, I can see it. To somebody else, they may not have a clue. Oh, he's just lazy getting out there. Well, if his technique was a little bit better, it's like covering the ball. If you completely open up like a swinging door, and your back is facing the sideline, in some cases facing the other basket, they're going to drive right around you every single time. You got to be able to angle them and absorb their contact and try to direct them towards the corner and not give them a wide open straight line drive to the basket. That's hard to guard, and that's hard to help. And so that's technique. And that's not necessarily a lack of effort. It's just not doing the right thing in order to stop the ball. And they've had a hard time stopping the ball all year. A lot of teams do. It's maybe the hardest thing to do in basketball is to stop the ball. And that's why teams that can beat people off the dribble can really break defenses down more consistently.
Lemansky, thank you for the super chat. Corey and Gary love the coverage. Good to take Gary's comments to heart. Love our younger talent. So there's different ways of looking at the situation right now. Appreciate Lemansky's comments. And before we get to, we're going to try to wrap this thing up by about 10 o'clock. So we've got 2 more callers on the line. I believe. Let me see if we've got. Yes, we've got our caller on our phone line as well. But first, our RTI Threads player of the game went with a guy who has won this several times this year, Peyton Sanford, with 19-6-3. With that being said, I do not think, it was mentioned earlier by Doug, I don't think he's ready for the NBA, Gary. I'm not a scout.
No, I don't think so either. But I tell you, there's a lot of things to like about that kid.
Yes.
He's tough. You can tell that it really means a lot to him. He's a great leader. He plays hard. He's got a chance. He's got to add some things to his game. But he's one of the best players in the Big Ten. And I agree with the previous thread that they've got some young players that've got a chance to develop into pretty good players. They got the freshman of the year in the Big Ten. So, as I've said before, you got to look at the entire picture. When after the Michigan State game, everybody was all fired up and they're ready to go. Hey, this team's got a chance, and now they laid an egg, and it's so it swings all the way back the other way. And you got to be somewhere, a little bit more in the middle. I think they've got some good young talent. Now they got to add pieces to the puzzle. There's no doubt about that, but every team's got to do that. But there's a few players there they can build around that I think are going to be really good Big Ten players down the road.
We didn't have you on after the Illinois game, but that was an egg that was laid that was hard to explain, at least from my perspective, how you come out seemingly so flat in a game so big. And I know they lost today, but I
don't think they were flat.
I think they were flat?
I think it was the other way around. I think they were way too jacked up and were out of control and playing too fast and never got in a rhythm, never got under control, fell behind big, panicked. And that happens a lot senior day. Senior day is not a fun. Tennessee loses at home on senior day, and they're one of the best teams in the country. You got the ceremony, you got your parents there, you got your grandparents there, you're all jacked up. You think you're going to win because it is senior day and you're playing at home. And it's not an easy game to play. And Illinois is a really good basketball team. So, if Perkins makes that dunk on that steal and cuts it to whatever it was with about 5-6 minutes to go, who knows what might have happened. He blows that dunk and they go down and score, and it broke their back. So I don't think it was a lack of effort. I think it was a lack of execution. And I think in some cases it was like they're almost out of control. I think they were almost too geeked up, especially at the beginning, rushed shots, things like that. And I think that hurt them more than a lack of effort.
That blame go more on the players or the coaches when that happens in such a big moment?
It's a tough thing to do. I think it's probably more on the players. They're the ones that, especially the three seniors played horribly.
Yes.
Ironically, on senior night, the three seniors played horribly. And what can a coach do if your three seniors play like hell? I mean, they Tony got into foul trouble and he sits and never gets it going. And both Patrick and Cricky struggled right from the get-go. So, if your three seniors play badly, against a team like Illinois,
you're done.
It could have been worse.
I was shocked they were within 4.
Yeah,
and they were within 4
I was too.
In that second half.
I was too. And if Perkins makes that dunk, who knows what might happen. I thought that was a huge, huge play.
And I thought their postseason, not that they were out of it, because if they win here in the Big Ten tournament, get a run, it's a different story. But I believe, and I'll believe looking back on this later, that their chances to make the tournament late in this season were lost on senior day. Not in the Big Ten tournament. They were lost on senior day.
I agree.
Illinois at home.
Yeah. If they'd have beat Illinois at home, they would have played better today. I don't think there's any doubt. Like I said, I thought it was a hungover from them. They put so much into that game because they had to fight to get to that position to begin with. Yeah. And then to, on senior day to not play well, I think it was a real blow, and I think it carried over to the game today.
All right, we're going to run through these last couple callers here in the last couple minutes of this show. Let's get to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close. Who's on the line? Hello.
This is Pat.
Hi, Pat.
Hey, Pat.
Hey, Gary. Hey, Corey. I can't believe you guys continue, not you guys. Gary, I can't believe you continue to defend Fran McCaffrey and Iowa's defense. Why do you do that?
Well, I haven't defended it. I've said that they've lost their games on the defensive end.
Oh, hold on, Pat. Hold on, Pat. Hey, Pat. Let Gary respond. Go
Yeah,
ahead, Gary.
I mean, I'm not, I'm not going to get incredibly specific, but I've said that where they've lost games, they've lost it on the defensive end. And, even today I pointed out a couple of things they did in terms of closing out. So, Fran's a good friend. I have a lot of respect for Fran. He's a good man. He treated my son really well. He treats his players, love to play for him. He's a good person. He's a good coach. He's got a tough job. I'm not going to sit here and rip on him up and down. But I did say that where they have struggled is on the defensive end, and that's probably about as far as I'm going to go with it.
Okay, well, I'm going to go one step further.
Sure.
The Iowa basketball team this afternoon was completely undisciplined. Peyton Sanford barrel rolled a guy after he didn't get a rebound. Just completely fouled him with no intentions 9 feet from the basket. Tony Perkins committed at least 2 fouls that the first one was with like 8.5 minutes left. He just barrel rolled into a guy. And so I want you to tell me how that is defending Fran's coaching style, because it just looked like the team was really undisciplined. And I haven't heard, I watched the game, I heard you guys' comments, and I haven't heard any of you say, boy, that team looked undisciplined tonight.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate the call.
That might be the case. I think it's more frustration and watching things disappear that you really were chasing after. And that's, I get it. And if that might cause a lack of discipline, well, then maybe. But I think it was more frustration. I think their backs were against the wall for a long time this whole year. They finally got themselves in position to make a run to get where everybody wanted to and where they wanted to go. And then they've had 2 really, really tough games. And I think it's frustration more than anything. Does that result in a lack of discipline? Possibly. And they might agree with that, but I think it's a lot of frustration when you've put so much energy into something and you're seeing it slip through your hands. That's not an easy thing to go through or watch.
All right, Iowa Smokehouse call line. Tony is probably going to be our final caller because it looks like Ryan dropped off. Tony, my guess is you're going to be a little bit more forgiving.
Daddy! Daddy!
Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
Cutting teeth, Tony. Cutting teeth.
I know.
I'm guessing you're going to be a little bit nicer to Gary than Pat.
Yeah. I want to say one thing. Doug probably almost perfectly encapsulated what I've thought of with this whole time of me supporting Fran, and I do, and I've been, very vocal about that. But I do not want to see Iowa go down the same road that they did to you guys. I know you can play it politically correct and however you want to say it, Gary, but they did you guys dirty, and it was completely inexcusable. And I do not want to see Iowa do the same thing that they did to you guys that they could possibly do to Fran. Okay. Now, you guys had a little bit more success than Fran, but it's just frustrating. Like, this is coming from, I don't have the same mental encyclopedia that Doug does, but I remember listening to games down in Fort Madison where I lived and just following the games on radio and just doing tally marks for the score, just to follow along with Iowa basketball. Like, this is where I'm coming from in like the early to mid to late 90s. Like, that's where the love of the game came from, like following you guys as Dr. Tom teams. And I really do feel like ever since then, I'll compare it to I'm a Cubs fan. I really think that we need to sacrifice like a black goat or whatever you want to say, you know, to lighten up the humor. Like, there needs to be something done with Iowa men's basketball to get the worm turned. I think it's beyond, I don't know. It's beyond words at that. I'll open with that comment. I have a few questions, but I'll let you guys respond to that.
Go ahead, Corey.
I teed that up for you, Coach Claus.
My only response to that, Tony, is you said they did Coach and Dr. Tom dirty.
Yeah.
And I, while I'm not saying you're wrong, I would like for you to tell me why you believe that. And then also tell me why you believe it would be doing Fran dirty if something was done. We'll put that into words of why you think. Again, I'm not saying they weren't done dirty. I'm just asking you to explain your take there.
To me, there was zero reason to fire them and let them go the way they did. Okay. The success they had over a long period of time, I get it. Like, fans get frustrated and they want to say, look, we need to like reach the next level. But as Coach Close kind of alluded to, what realistically can be our next level of saying, okay, we look at all these other programs and they're making Sweet 16s, they're making Elite Eights year after year after year after year. But when you look at the recruiting base that Iowa has, they don't have the what was it you said earlier, Coach? I'm sorry. With Wisconsin have a little bit better recruiting base than Iowa.
Well, the big metropolitan areas where you got more players.
Yeah, and Iowa doesn't have that.
Well, hold on a second. The real Hayden in the chat says Iowa State deals with the same geographical issues, and that is true, Tony. I live in Ames. All right, we're as much of a cornfield as Iowa City. Otzelberger has athletes, and he's had athletes every year.
You know,
and Hoiberg had athletes every year.
Man, I don't want to go too far off topic with this, but
I'm just saying.
let me just say this, and I'll say this comment, and I'll hope we can move on after this. Iowa State has something that Iowa doesn't. And
we're gonna go back to NIL again.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. But they did bet. They did okay.
That one person makes a huge difference.
But they did okay before.
I think that one person was still funding them privately that's just my personal opinion. I think college basketball recruiting is so dirty that I'm sure Coach Close has many stories, you know, and we don't even want to open the can of worms of Deion Thomas. We don't even want to say those two names together, but that's just me. We'll get back on topic of this year, and that's a thing of the past.
Tony, I don't have an answer to your question. You said you have access to PayPal. Yes. What did you mean by that?
I just wanted to say I sent you a donation for the Big Ten tournament. So that's
thank you. Yeah, I don't have that up in front of me, but thank you for that.
I've just got three things. My first thing is as a starting point, what was our expectation going into this year?
Mine was to make the NCAA tournament.
Okay. To me, it was to be right on the bubble where they're at. I thought they'd be on the other side of the bubble.
Well, I guess I should say my hope was to make the NCAA tournament. Like, expectation-wise, it's probably what they did.
Yeah. Like, I think that's something that sometimes we get too caught up in it, and it's take a step back and say, did they reach the expectations we probably thought they should have, all things considered?
Yeah.
Coach, I'd really like you to expand, if you can, on the statement that you always make that it seems like sometimes in a game you're one or two plays away. And I don't think sometimes people understand this, like a bounce here or there, or a foul call here or there, or like you mentioned, like Tony making the dunk instead of missing it. Like sometimes people may not realize, like, yeah, that may have only cut the lead from, 7-5 or 9-7 or whatever you want to say. Like, it's so much further than that can get the ball rolling. Like, just expand upon that.
Well, the game's a game of runs and a game of momentum and things like that, especially when you're coming from as far behind as they were coming in that game. They had a long way to climb, so every bucket is big, and you get on a roll. And we remember the Michigan State game last year. I mean, that was ridiculous to come back and win that game. And that's one of those shots doesn't go in, then they don't win that game. So I mean, if the game is hugely got a lot to do with momentum, and you gotta generate some of that on your own. But in some cases, it can be a weird bounce or a bad call or a tough shot that doesn't go in, things like that. So yeah.
And it's just sometimes if you don't have, and I don't want to criticize too much, but if you don't have a mentally tough group, okay, and one or two things doesn't go their way, it's very tough for that group to overcome.
That could happen. Yeah. I think with this team, they dug themselves such a big hole during a year. It looked like there was no way they're going to have any chance. And all of a sudden they get hot and play well, and it's right in front of them. And then to watch that dissipate is tough, because they were really close to getting where they wanted to go. And then they fell short. There's nothing worse than falling short. Trust me. And so it's tough. It's a tough thing to go through.
What are you two's March setup when you want to watch? What is your March setup when you want to watch the tournament?
Well, my son's here this year, so it'll be a lot of fun because he gets out his bracket and he puts it up, and we'll get a couple TVs and things like that. We are heading down south for part of it, but no, I really, this time of the year I love. I mean, I loved it when I coached. We were talking about that today as a family. The Big Ten would start, and if you're lucky and could advance in the NCAA tournament, you're gone 2-3 weeks, and you come home and get packed up and go again. And we had some unbelievable times, great places to visit, and it's an incredible time of the year. So it's maybe not quite as exciting as when you're coaching, but I still enjoy it very much.
And that's what I try to say is, like, I'm trying to ground myself here. Is I know we're not going to make the tournament, obviously, but it's such an enjoyable time of the year that I think it's unmatched in any sporting event. I don't think any sporting event can match it. And I even think
that the Iowa women are still alive and got a chance to win the whole doggone thing. So that's pretty nice to have.
Here, you want to look at a bright side. I know people aren't going to like to hear this, but I had a pretty good time 10 years ago or whenever it was when they made that run to Madison Square Garden in the NIT. So now they may go out on Tuesday and lose the first round. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, chances are Iowa would be done next weekend anyways after making the NCAA tournament. Maybe they're not, and maybe we get an NIT run. I know that's not going to make people happy, but at least we're watching basketball. Anyways, all right.
it'll make me happy, is what I was saying.
Yeah,
and NIT, because as Coach has said, and he's alluded to a few times, Wisconsin made a big NIT run last year.
Yeah, and they fell off a cliff in February and March this year. But anyways.
But they looked really good today. I don't know if you watched them.
I didn't watch it. I'm sure
they looked. I'm sure you did, Coach. Did you?
I did. I watched all the Big Ten games, and
they looked like
more competitive. I don't know how the Penn State Indiana game had, but the rest of them were not real competitive, including the Wisconsin Maryland game. Maryland was horrible today.
Wisconsin looks like a second weekend tournament team.
Okay. Well, we'll see.
You got a chance.
That's fine. I'll close out. I'm taking enough of your time. I'm sorry, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it, sir.
You.
All right. Drew says, thank you, Coach. Really appreciate your insight and ability to filter out emotions. Doug, sorry if I was a little emotional. Been a long day. Really want Iowa winning championships and going to the Sweet 16, just like all of you. No reason to apologize, Doug. Thank you for the super chat. Always enjoy you take. Absolutely. Loyal fan, good fan. Tom72, why does every opponent have their best three-point shooting game when they play Iowa? Well, I think that's pretty obvious. They made 11 threes. They shot over 50% from three. The Hawks actually shot pretty well from three themselves. They made, let's see, 8 threes, 8 of 21 for 38%. That's not bad.
No.
But again, can't give up 11 of 20 from 3.
11 of 20.
Yeah.
So that's 33 points on 20 possessions. That's
and you got out rebounded decisively. Yeah, got rebounded. I mean, those two right there, right? Turnovers.
Shoot free throws well when they're normally a very good free throw shooting team. I think that's nerves and the whole deal of what we talked about.
Commander Cody brings up the bye week. I know, Gary, you downplayed that a little bit, but I wonder if that bye week hurt him before Illinois. I wonder.
I don't think so.
Had 8 days off, Gary. That's a weird time to have 8 days off before senior day.
Maybe.
Anyways.
And
then Aaron, is Fran okay health-wise? He's normally much more fiery than he has been. Don't know. I think they're pretty private people for the most part, so probably aren't going to know that unless something happens, and we hope it doesn't. Brandon says, I want to hear your take on 2 fouls for the remainder of the first half. You talked about that in the past, but
that's a tough call. I think coaches have their philosophy on it, and they don't usually go away from that. And I get it. I mean, that's got to be your own personal preference. It's not an easy decision.
All right, folks. Here's the deal. I'm going to let you slide, Gary. Take up more than enough of your time. I'm going to take a couple of calls here to wrap things up.
All right.
I hope we can get you for NIT post game.
Well, we'll see.
Let's see what we got. All right. Let's see. It's going to be a busy week. We'll talk. You and I will probably chat a little bit selection Sunday and see what we got.
Everybody enjoy the tournament as much as they can. And when is the women's selection? Is that Sunday too?
It's nighttime, Sunday night.
Sunday night.
We'll get the men's.
We'll get a couple home games.
Yep, we'll get a couple home. It's going to be a busy week in Carver if they get the NIT at home as well. So real busy week.
That might hurt them.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and then women's.
That might hurt them with home game at the NIT if that's the case. Because
first round is supposed to be Tuesday. You can at least get the first round game in at home, I would think, because the first round is Tuesday and Wednesday. So
maybe.
Anyways, all right, Gary. Appreciate your time, sir.
Yeah, see you, Corey.
All right, appreciate Coach Close each and every week, each and every game. We appreciate his insight. He is a gem for Hawkeye hoops. Be able to talk with him and get his expertise. We're talking Iowa's loss to Ohio State, their 90-70 defeat. I want to thank Autograph, the Autograph app. I've been talking about this app for quite some time. If you haven't already, check it out and download it because you can level up your fandom, especially right now with March Madness. I sent out a tweet earlier today about some incredible tickets for the NCAA tournament. Incredible deals, folks. And you've got to use the code FTHOTS. It's co-founded by Tom Brady himself, this app is. It's your one-stop shop for everything college sports, access to the best sports content, exciting fan challenges, and exclusive rewards. Crazy discounts on tickets, limited edition merch. And again, the crazy discounts on tickets, that's worth repeating. They've got this true fan pricing, $16 tickets, folks, for some of the biggest games in college basketball. If you're ready to join the party, download the free Autograph app today and use the code FTHOTS. That's from the Hawkeye of the Storm, FTHOTS. Search the App Store or Google Play. Click the link in our description. That'll take you right to the app. And again, you'll use that code FTHOTS. Again, that is the Autograph app, co-founded by the legendary Tom Brady himself. All right, let's go back to our call-in line. We'll get to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. Ryan is here. Ryan, how are you, sir?
Well, Corey, I've had better days. How about you, my man?
It is what it is, sir. You know, you and I had a conversation back in November about how this team had some pieces that maybe were poised to win in a tournament setting because of the guard play that we saw in flashes from Tony Perkins and even a young Brock Harding. And unfortunately, not going to get to see that unless it comes to fruition in the NIT.
I think what's most disappointing is this really wasn't a young team, if you think about it. So, you know, you and I have run through it before, but you got Cricky a 5th year, Peyton's a 3-year, Tony a 4-year, Patrick a 5-year, and there's experience here, and if we crap the bag,
Crap the bag. Wait, crap the bag or crap the bed?
Bag.
Okay, they crap the bag. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess that's a cruder way of saying we really should. I mean, in a down Big Ten, this should have been, at worst, a 5th place team. Would you disagree?
I mean, you did lose. I'm not making excuses, but you did lose Chris Murray. You lost Connor. You lost Verbracha.
Everybody else loses key players too, and I get it. Cricky, I'm not going to miss him. Not the worst player we ever took on, obviously, but bad defender, pretty weak rebounder, and Verbracha at least looked like he was willing to be a fighter, and that was the difference there. If Coach Close was still on, but we got Corey, and courageous Corey, I really respect you. Don't shave again until we make the Sweet 16, and let's see who looks older when that day happens. But anyway, my question for Coach Close would be, would he recommend a defensive specialist assistant coach, even if it means somebody's got to go?
I think I would guess that regardless of Coach Close's take on that, Ryan, I think you'd probably agree with this. Fran will never do that. He's never going to let somebody go this late in his tenure to do that. To hire somebody.
In one way, Iowa can market itself as this is where coaches want to go. We pay you extremely competitively. We're loyal to a fault. You can be last in defense and win 9 to 10 games, but still find a way to be a national punchline, and you got a contract until you're 75. And I'm not against Kirk, by the way, at all. But it's just the way. Now, maybe what I'm saying is semi-irrelevant because there's a new sheriff in town. And, of course, a lot of my frustration is, the nightmare that was Mr. Gary Barta. But it's like, I'm so tired of being great at offense, equally bad at defense, or vice versa. You know what I mean? Now,
Yes.
the women's team is kind of a different animal, and it's why it's the greatest show in town. It's because they're not a great defensive team, but they got the greatest player of all time and a solid core around her, and they win. And when you're down 11 with 2 minutes to go and you find a way to win by 5 in overtime, you're talking to a guy, by the way, whose family is a 42-year reigning season ticket holder at Carver, 11th row, section II. And I'll tell you what, it's really hard for me to say that I just don't feel up for men's games anywhere near I do for women's games. And I love both, and I always have. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of fans that feel the exact same way you do. And I know people are talking about Beth Getz in the chat. yeah, I mean, we don't know exactly what Beth Gets her thought process is on everything, but I don't think you're going to see her rock the boat more with, I mean, I don't know she's not going to fire Fran. She's just not going to do that.
I think what's fair, Corey, is, Fran has what? I'm going to count 2020 or, that COVID year as in. It's like what, 6 years in a row up until this year that he was in, counting that COVID year, because he was probably a 7 seed that year. He deserves more than letting him go. I mean, we just talked about Tom Davis and how that Georgia loss in the NIT first round at home in Carver was what supposedly ultimately sealed his deal. And he would have been fired, except Mary Sue Coleman, the president at the time, refused to let that happen, and she said he's got to play out his contract. So that's what happened there. But that game is a large part of what did him in. Now, I do not think a first-round loss in the NIT will launch Fran. 2 years in a row, maybe we have a conversation. But you got to understand, 6 years in a row, coming off the Licklider era, and he didn't have what Tom Davis had. Trust me, Corey. I know you're a year or two younger than me, but if you remember 87, 88, 89, they inherited a gold mine, and they know it, and they admit it. But anyway, I'm frustrated. I just don't understand why we don't address what's been obvious for a decade, and that's, I guess, all I can say about that, man.
Well, Ryan, I appreciate you calling in, and I'm going to be doing a Selection Sunday show with Kashin, so stay tuned for
What about an NIT selection show so we can all express our NIT fever and fill out our brackets?
Maybe we can just do a dual. And we could just have Kashin on for a dual thing, because I don't know that we can get enough traction for it to be worth having an NIT show.
Maybe we can all throw in $5 and ask Kashin to fill out her NIT bracket and see if she walks off or not.
I'll suggest that to her, Ryan.
Don't. Thanks, man.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the call. All right, appreciate Ryan. Here's Kyle. Hey, Cody, Brada, I just had a thought. What would it be if Iowa brought from the portal Terrence Shannon Jr.? What would it be? Well, it would be interesting. Is Terrence Shannon Jr. transferring again? I don't think that's not going to happen. Umesh Arampath. LSU Angel Reese better than Iowa men's team. What? What are you talking about? Let's get Ryan back here. We're in here. Ryan, what's going on here? What's this Umesh Arampath talking about?
Oh, you put me back on?
Hey, you're back on, Ron. I want your comment on this comment on the screen.
Angel Reese, that is not me, by the way. Well, Angel Reese is pretty awesome. Let's face it. She's coached by a legend who Corey only wishes his mother dressed like her, and that would be Miss Kim Mulkey.
Let's get.
But I will say, 1 or 2 nights this week, I woke up at 3 a.m. in cold sweats because I had a bad dream about Kim Mulkey.
Tony, you logged back on. I'm assuming you want a word.
Well, no.
I thought I was off, by the way. Sorry about this. I had no idea it was on the air.
I do have to give you crap, Ryan, since I get a chance to do this. What are you doing wearing a Steelers shirt? You're a Chicago guy.
The only thing about Illinois I have any loyalty to is my dang driver's license. Period. I hate this place. I love my job. I like my house, and that's about it. Because I got the bar.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Tony, anything else to add to that?
It's something that I don't know if I put in the chat or whatnot. I think that Beth Getz has a very unique opportunity here. And I think this is her first true test. And what I mean by that is, number one, with the men's team, how creative is she going to be with putting a bid together if we can host more than one NIT game? Number two, can she capitalize on the fever of the women's team, which no one's going to deny, to get some butts in the seats for that? It's going to be a Tuesday night game, most likely, and it's probably going to be in Bradley. Would be my guess. Like that, I could break down NIT with you even if I that's.
Can we save that? Can we save that?
We can save it. We can save it. We can save it. I can gladly save that for you. But I'm sure if you've even, you talked to Tim a little bit, like my unhealthy obsession with all of this.
We're losing viewers by the second, Tony.
Probably. But so Kashin will be on for that. That's the plan.
I got to nail down. I didn't know what was going to happen with the men, right? So I'm not going to do a selection Sunday show after the men's tournament selection show, CBS show. So we'll get probably a show in the evening. So I'll keep everybody posted on that.
I would say around, if I had to guess from past years, around 7 to 8 Central Time. Both. Yeah,
that's.
Go ahead.
That's when we get NCAA women's basketball tournament, and
should be the NIT.
Right.
But the NIT is just so unique this year, and I could go off on that as well. But
we'll talk about it Sunday.
I will be there.
Okay.
But are you planning on I saw is Kashin saying she will do women's tournament shows as well?
She's going to be here through the tournament. Absolutely.
Okay. And I know Coach said he'll try to make it as much as possible.
So. Well, NIT. I get it. A little bit of a difference there.
I can't even do enough on the screen of the
Coach Close loves himself some men's basketball, so
he does. And then one thing I'll close out is, and I will really stop after this one, is very interesting to see the crowd tonight. The crowd, none. There was no crowd really.
Oh, yeah.
It was like a local high school game. Whereas a week ago, you couldn't get a ticket.
It's like Carver North. Thank you, Tony.
It is. Thanks. Appreciate
it, sir. All right, let's go back. Esther says, hey, Corey, how you doing? I'm doing good. Thanks, Esther. Appreciate that. And final caller, Iowa Smokehouse call online. Tom, you know who our RTI Threads player of the game is, Tom? It's Peyton Sandfort, 19.6
Caitlin Clark.
Well, we could have named Caitlin Clark, but we'll save that for, a week from now, right? Yeah. Oh, a little over a week from now.
Corey, I sat here 60 minutes and didn't realize that I wasn't entered into the studio. So, and then you were going to exit. I had some questions for Close, and I don't know that. My question for him would have been, are we getting the best talent out of Iowa?
It's a good question. I don't know how, Gary. That'd be a good question for Gary. I mean, I think that's...
I did some Google searching. Iowa doesn't have anybody in the top 200 and 24/7 or ESPN of 2024. The state of
Omaha. Well, he has missed on some guys. All right, he missed on DJ Carton. He missed on Omaha Billieu. He missed on what's his face from Oskaloosa. Now, a couple of those guys have kind of been busts. Well, I don't know a couple of those guys, but they haven't all panned out exactly
Koch
like.
Is 24/7 has Koch as a 69, ranked 69th in the nation, and ESPN doesn't have him in their top 100. But that I'm just telling you what I read. The
He's
top
not from
10
he's
players.
Not from Iowa.
No, he's from Illinois.
Yeah.
But the top 10 players in Iowa, nobody that I can find has committed to Iowa.
Yeah, well, that's a big good question.
My question would have been for him. I believe when Close was here and Coach Tom, they tried to get the best. I'm not saying they got, you want to try to get a couple of the best players from the state. I mean, because that's your nucleus. Doesn't matter what college you're at,
Yeah.
The other thing is, Corey, that's what's really amazing is I started watching you when you first started, one of your first 600 subscriptions.
Okay.
Who would have ever thought that women's basketball would have been the one thing that you'd be doing post-game shows on that puts you over the top?
Is that what put me over the top?
How many views? Well, look how many views you had to your Nebraska, Iowa post-game show. I think that might be higher than any Iowa football game, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay.
But it's the closest. Yeah, you're right. I don't think we've had a men's we've had a men's basketball show eclipse the 10,000 view mark. I don't think.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's. I'm not here to bash on the coach. I think you got to get your best in-state talent, and I'm not saying 5 players from the state of Iowa, top 1 or 2. A disappointing thing when I was younger was when we lost LaFrance to Kansas, both Iowa and Iowa State. You got to keep them top Iowa players, and I understand coming up we're not going to be able to keep Jack. He's not going to stay at Iowa, and I understand.
Well, you got Curtis Stinson Jr.
There's some talent in this state.
You've got Rafe LaFrance's kid up in Decorah. Yeah. I mean, it's good talent. I mean, hey, the kid that they got over at Iowa State that played for Ames High, whose name escapes me. I used to see him around town all the time. I can't remember the kid's name now. People know who I'm talking about, but
well, and then when I go down through the top 200 rankings for 24/7 to see what some of these schools have pulled in from the Illinois area, it's Iowa State, it's not like we can't compete. Do you understand? With some of these players.
Yeah.
They're not going to schools that aren't in the Midwest and that's got other things to offer.
Yeah.
So I do think the recruiting could step up. Yeah.
I agree. I think that I don't think you put a ceiling on recruiting. I understand there's some disadvantages, but multiple ways to skin a cat, I guess. So yeah, those are good off-season topics.
I got some women's take, but we'll do that another day.
I'll be back Sunday.
I'll let you go. Yep.
All right.
Later.
Thanks, Tom. All right, folks. Yes. Again, unfortunately, I wish it was a better night, and I feel like it's just Groundhog Day, right? With Iowa men, and the postseason. The exception being 2 years ago in the Big Ten tournament, and then they laid an egg in the NCAA's. But anyways, Ohio State defeating Iowa in the technically second round. I think I tweeted out first round. Second round, technically Thursday round, first game for Iowa. 90-78. Iowa falls up in Minneapolis. Doesn't matter the location. The Hawkeyes struggle regardless in this tournament most years. Do want to acknowledge, we talked a little bit about our sponsors earlier, but one final plug for one of our theme sponsors, Iowa Smokehouse. Tasting is believing. Check out their meat sticks, their jerky. Everything is yummy. It's tasty. It's great for March Madness, whatever events you're catering to. Check it all out. Check the lineup out and buy your selection over at your variety over at iowasmokehouse.com. Use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your order. Again, that's the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your total order. Get free shipping on any $50 order. Again, thank you so much to Iowa Smokehouse. RTI Threads, the Zach Lutmer gear is up. RTIthreads.com. This kid's a star in the making, and this is just slick gear. Really high quality stuff, too. And again, download the Autograph app. Use that link in our description. I'll be back with you Sunday, folks, and likely more content between now and Sunday. As you see, I'm not my home base at the moment, but always pumping out content here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Thank you again to Coach Close and to everybody being here in spite of the loss. And it's been a joy once again, the third straight year, recapping Iowa men's basketball games. We'll talk to you later, folks. Have a good night, and we'll hope the best for the Iowa women on Selection Sunday. Have a great night.